Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Gayle Stevens-White. I'd been following Gayle on Instagram for a while for her stories, her passion about menopause and her creativity. She's also quite funny. When she agreed to come on the podcast, I was delighted because I knew she would be so open about her entire experience and be willing to go into detail, which is what we're all about. She has many wonderful strings to her bow, and I urge you to check out her website and Instagram, details of which I will put in the show notes and give you at the end of the show. Before we continue, as you know, I'm a huge fan of Cozy Earth, our sponsor, and I enjoy their temperature regulating bed linen because I feel cool and comfortable all night and wake up feeling restored. Cozy Earth have provided an exclusive offer to all of you fabulous listeners, so go to cozyearth.com and use code MENOPAUSE for 35% off site-wide. In today's episode, Gayle and I talk about her search for community as she started off feeling intensely isolated during perimenopause. She also discusses her symptoms of debilitating overwhelm, brain fog, anxiety, and complete lack of cognitive function. She shares what genuinely helped her and what has brought her to doing what she is now. Gayle, it is so fabulous to meet you. Would you mind telling everybody to begin with just a little bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. And thank you so much for having me. I am delighted to be featuring on your podcast. So I am Gayle Stevens-White. I'm originally from Surrey, but I'm now based in Hampshire. So I'm happily married to my gorgeous husband, and I've got a 28-year-old daughter and 2 stepchildren and a little puppy called Margot.
Oh.
So you might see her randomly on my stories. Be more Margot. She features. She's becoming a bit of a menopause mascot, actually.
What is she?
She's a cockapoo.
Ah, snap! I've got my poor passed out cockapoo here, sweltering in
Oh, wow. Amazing. Amazing.
Margot should meet one day.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. They're great, aren't they? Love them.
Yes. So in Hampshire and doing amazing things. Tell us first of all about menopause. Whereabouts are you in terms of menopause?
So I am perimenopausal. I had what I lovingly describe now as my menopausal meltdown in 2019. And I literally had no clue what was going on. I think the perimenopause kind of hit me like a juggernaut. There was no creeping up. It just kind of bang, it happened. I had no idea what was going on. So that was 2019. But knowing what I know now about menopause and having joined the dots, I think it started much earlier than that, but my symptoms really started to have an impact on my life 3 years ago, and that's when sort of things started coming crashing down really for me in terms of my ability to function as I had before.
And what were your symptoms? What defined the actual crash?
Initially, when I think back on it, my period started to change at the back end of 2018, but I didn't really make the connection. I just thought, that's just my periods. They started getting heavier and more uncomfortable. Yeah, really painful actually. And on 2 occasions, I had to leave a place of work to go and change my clothes because, I had flooded so terribly. But I just carried on and didn't really think anything of it. And it wasn't until, as I say, in the 2019, my cognitive ability to function, I suppose my brain function was so impaired. So how it showed up for me was extreme anxiety. I'd never, ever suffered with anxiety before. Memory loss, brain fog. I was very tearful, mood swings, and just this huge feeling of overwhelm, like a complete sort of blanket had kind of encased me, and I just felt like I couldn't cope. I mean, prior to this, I was a confident, competent young woman, and now I felt like I just wanted to stay at home. And I had extreme fatigue as well. That was another of my symptoms, which actually sort of physically, really debilitated me. And I just wanted to stay in bed. So for me, the hot flushes, I never had. We hear a lot about hot flushes, and obviously, many people do suffer with them. But for me, that wasn't something, and so I didn't know what was going on. I just thought, what the hell is going on for me? And I at that time I went through a real kind of depressed state, I have to say. So for me, it was more the kind of the cognitive symptoms.
Mm-hmm. What made you realise that it was actually perimenopause?
I was on a school holiday because I was a teacher prior to doing what I'm doing now. And I think it was the Easter holidays. And as I say, I had this meltdown during this holiday. And the thought of having to go back to school to contend with work just filled me with dread. And it was at that point that I thought, actually, I need to get some help with this. I really need to find out what's going on. It was my mum, actually, that suggested it might be menopause related. She had a very different experience to me, but it was her that suggested it and said, why don't you go to the doctors? So that was kind of like the moment that I thought, oh, okay, maybe it is related to the menopause. And so I took myself off to the doctors.
What did they say? What was their response?
So that was a very negative experience, really negative. The first GP that I saw was a male GP, and he quite promptly told me I was far too young to be menopausal and suggested I was depressed and that I needed antidepressants and talking therapy. And literally like that, was very kind of, point blank about it. This is what you need. And I came home and I just burst into tears because for me, I wanted an answer, and I knew that I knew it wasn't depression, even though I was going through a depressed state, as it were.
Yeah, there is a difference.
Yeah, massively. And I guess at that point I wanted answers. And because my mum had made the suggestion, I was kind of hoping that would tick the box. So I decided to go back and see another GP the very same week, actually, on the Wednesday. That was back in the day when you could actually see a GP face to face and get an appointment quite easily. So I thought I'll ask to see a female GP this time. And she had much the same response. She said to me, "You're too young to be menopausal." I was 43 at the time, so I'm 46 now. However, she did recognise that I was having a really stressful time at work because I was literally going into work and turning off my computer. The feeling of overwhelm was just so huge that I would look at my emails and I'd think to myself, I don't even know where to start with this. And I had quite a stressful job. I've worked in alternative education for many, many years, working with very challenging young people. I was a safeguarding officer. I was working with young people around their social and emotional development, out in the community, doing home tutoring as well. So it was really kind of targeted, important work. And I was going to work and forgetting, students' names, vital information in meetings. I mean, it was horrendous. It was really, really stressful. And I felt like I wasn't being able to do my job properly. So when I explained this to the GP, she said that she thought some time off work would be beneficial, which I grabbed with open arms, because at that point, I just didn't want to go back to work. I just felt so unwell, physically, mentally, emotionally. I was exhausted. And she actually wrote me, the sick note that you get, that you have to provide to your employers. She had put on there that it was an adjustment reaction. Yeah, which I was a bit confused about. She wouldn't recognise that it was anything to do with the menopause because she clearly didn't agree with that. And so that allowed me some time away from work, which was, really helpful and took some of my stress levels down somewhat. But again, I went home and I was no further forward. I thought to myself, well, what is this? But, because I think sometimes we just want an answer, don't we?
Yeah.
For all
then
of
we can
these
do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, knowledge is power, isn't it? And until we know what we're dealing with, how are we supposed to know what to do next?
Exactly.
So for the third time that week, I was in the same GP practice on the Friday. So I went Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because I had my cervical screening appointment. And I went to see the practice nurse for that. And she was absolutely lovely. And this was a real pivotal moment for me, I think, because I think I just offloaded on her. And I said, I think I'm menopausal, but I don't know. The doctors, aren't agreeing with me, but these are my symptoms. She was so lovely. She, honestly, when I think about it now, it makes me quite emotional because it was a real turning point for me. It was just one of those moments where I thought, right, okay, because she said to me, listen, dear, she said, sometimes the doctors don't have enough of the right information. And if you think you are perimenopausal, I can't remember whether she said perimenopausal or menopausal. She said, if you think you are, then treat yourself as such. If you're symptomatic, treat yourself as such. And I literally, it just gave me permission. I went home and I was like, right, I'm going to do something about this. And it was almost, it was just such a weight off my shoulders. So even though I didn't get an official diagnosis ever, actually, that really propelled me to kind of start helping myself and doing something about it. And that really gave me a lift, actually, just knowing that, okay, you're on the right track, you know?
Well, thank goodness for her, and to anyone else out there, if you're not getting what you feel you need. And we do know ourselves better than doctors on the whole. Yes, obviously doctors have immense knowledge, but if they don't have the right knowledge, then often it is the nurses who just have that key, which is wonderful. And the fact that you keep on pushing to get the information, that is absolutely fantastic. As a teacher, my goodness, I know how hard you work, having just done the tour of the secondary schools for my youngest. Even on the tour days, you are on all day, every day, and having to deal with maybe more than 1,000 kids. That is, it is big, and respect to every teacher in the land. I do have a question I want to ask you about that. But going back to where you were, what did you then do? What did you do to make yourself feel better?
I'm a pretty proactive person. So I went home and I started Googling the hell out of menopause because where else to start? You know, the GPs couldn't give me any information. So, you know, I did what many people do and are still doing. And I went online and I was like, I am going to find out everything that I need to know about this. And I just threw myself into finding out as much information as I could. And so that was really helpful for me in terms of, you know, arming myself with that knowledge and that education. I mean, back then, there probably wasn't quite as much online as there is now, to be honest. So had to be quite sort of careful, you know, what sites I was looking at and what have you. But I did come across the wonderful menopause community on Instagram, which, you know, I mean, I'm all about community, as you know. So that was really helpful. And at that time, I thought to myself, do you know what? I cannot be the only person that's going through this. None of my friends were going through it. I felt so isolated. I couldn't talk to anybody at the time. None of my friends were going through it. I didn't know anybody. I mean, I didn't really even know what perimenopause was then. I knew the term menopause, but I didn't know what perimenopause was. So learning about that was a real eye-opener as well. And that's when I started the Menopause Cafe event, because I thought to myself, it can't just be me. And it wasn't. So in terms of sort of the first thing that I did was to reach out to other people and to start talking about it. I mean, I love talking and I will talk about menopause to everyone all day, every day. And that for me has really, really helped in my journey. But alongside that, I changed my lifestyle, basically. I really looked at myself as a whole person and thought, right, what can I do to improve how I'm feeling? So I changed my diet. I ramped up my exercise routine. I started being kinder to myself and really sort of trying to listen in to my body and what it needed. What else did I do? I took lots of natural supplements to begin with as well. And that really helped at the time. And for an amount of time, it did. And I think just doing those small things, they add up to a bigger effect, if you like, you know. And once you start helping yourself and looking after yourself, you instantly start to feel a little better. So I think I just kind of looked at everything and how could I kind of bring the stress levels down. And eventually, actually, I did end up leaving my job, which is not a small thing. That's a massive thing. But I really felt at that time, in order to look after myself, I really needed to have a bit of an evaluation about where I was in life and what was kind of serving me at that time. And I actually, back then, I did some training as a menopause fitness instructor. And that was really helpful as well, because I met lots of like-minded ladies who were doing much the same. And of course, the exercise and meeting a new community of women that I was teaching and delivering classes to. Looking back, when I think now, I think I was in the middle of this kind of meltdown, and that was how I managed it, was to throw myself into other things to help myself and help other people.
Ways to solve it. Yeah. The
Yeah,
community,
absolutely.
particularly on Instagram, has absolutely blown me away, having met in inverted commas so many people, and the fact that we are all going through it. Just to share the fact that we're having a crummy day or a great day or whichever way
Yeah,
it's going to go is really fantastic. With community in mind, one of my favourite photographs of you on the gram is you standing in a square or a high street with one of your beautiful jackets on, which we also have to talk about,
yeah.
with a placard saying, "Why are you not talking about menopause?" I love that. What was the response?
Oh, it's amazing. It really was. It's something I've been thinking about doing for quite a long time. I'm a grassroots campaigner for the Make Menopause Matter campaign, alongside, my sort of personal agenda to talk to all and sundry about menopause. I thought, right, I'm just going to go do it. It was so positive. It really was. I mean, the question, why are you not talking about menopause? So many people came up to me and said, well, I am actually.
Great.
And what was really interesting that particular day is I had a lot of men approach me and talk to me about their partners, about their wives. How can I support my wife? This is what she's going through. A little bit of offloading, which I think was probably really helpful at that time, but lots of really proactive men. And I tell you what was the most interesting thing about that. Many times I saw couples walk past and I could clock that the woman had clocked the sign, she'd seen the sign. Quite often, the women were prepared to walk past, and it was the men that were kind of giving the kind of, a nudge. What about this? And then it was that sort of propelled the conversation to start. That was my really big take home from that day, which I just think is quite interesting, because there are a lot of women and people, in general, talking about menopause, but for me on that particular day, it was really interesting the amount of men that wanted to, and that it sort of almost kind of gave them the opportunity to talk about it. Yeah, it was great. It was a really good, positive piece of work, and lots has come out of that since. So yeah, really pleased about that.
I think finding the opportunity to talk for many people is what is lacking, because they might be willing to, but they just don't know where to go.
Yes, yeah.
Which brings us to menopause cafes. So tell us about that.
So as I say, at the time when I was having my meltdown, I felt like I needed to talk to some people about it, and set up one in my my local area in Hampshire, in my nearest town in Alton. I mean, menopause cafes essentially are a safe space for anyone to come and talk about menopause. There's no agenda. I'm not pushing a product or a service. It's literally that safe space. And what's interesting about it as well is that sometimes you might not be talking about menopause. You might be talking about something completely different, but it's about sharing that space with other people, and just knowing that these other people who are in this room are going through similar or same experiences. And it's that shared experience. And I think what's really important about the Menopause Cafe, because I'm very open and I'll talk about menopause, as I say, to anyone. But because I share my story, I think, again, that gives other people that permission to kind of open up, and they can be free to share their experiences. And it's just grown really from one in Alton, and then I started another one in Borden in Hampshire. I mean, that's because I'm based here. And I have started one in Farnham in Surrey. And soon, I hope, fingers crossed, all being well, looking to start one in Godalming and possibly Guildford. It sounds like a lot, but the need is there.
Yes.
I mean, there are women everywhere, clearly,
Yes.
and there are menopausal women wanting to talk about menopause. And what's wonderful about it as well is that it doesn't have to be heaps of people turning up. It can be these kind of small groups of 3 or 4. And sometimes I've met with 1 or 2 women, and there's just been 3 of us. And the conversations that come out, and the community spirit, I think, is just really important. For me, it's important for people to feel that they're listened to and that they're heard, because I didn't have that. I didn't have that experience. I had my mum to talk to about it, but nobody else. So for me, it's just sort of, I suppose it's paying it back.
And genuinely knowing that you are not the only one is proven to alleviate symptoms of whatever it may be, whether it's perimenopause or grief or anything else. So yes,
Absolutely.
that building of community. How did you start your jackets? Because they are stunning, and the message on many of them, because they're wide and varied and very fabulous, is menavist and menopause matters and menopause positivity based. So
Yeah.
how on earth did they come to be?
It's a bit of a strange one, really, because I never really set out for this to be part of my business, but it's sort of organically grown. So the story is, last year in October, I was due to go to the rally at Parliament in London, and I ordered a Make Menopause Matter t-shirt, and it didn't arrive. And I was absolutely gutted. I thought, what can I do? I really want to show my support for the Make Menopause Matter campaign. I love camo anyway. And I had some of my own camouflage jackets, and I had some fabric pens. And the night before the rally, I literally designed my own and thought, right, I'm going to wear this because, I love this jacket and this is the message that I want. And the Menavist has really come from the fact that, I like to think of myself as an activist for menopause. So, put the two together and there you go. And when I was at the rally, I had a few people ask me, where'd you get your jacket? And I said, I designed it myself. And in another life, so my husband and I, we're antique collectors and we love anything vintage, old, pre-loved. We like to repurpose things. And randomly, I had a whole load of jackets that I had bought years ago with an intention of doing something with them. I had no idea what. And I thought to myself, they'll come in good use. I'm sure I'll be able to do something with them. And when a couple of people asked me, I want your jacket, or can I have something similar? I was like, actually, I think I could probably do that for you. So that's when it started. And it's just grown from there. And as you said, a lot of the slogans on the back are menopause related, because it's about getting that message out there. And I'm so proud of being part of the menopause community, and I want people talking about menopause. So I just think to myself, you know what, wear it loud and proud.
What better way to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's grown, and the Menaflop stock continues to grow. So I'm really, really excited about that. And it's really lovely as well, because it's sort of part of my creativity that I can really experiment with. And I'm having fun with it. And that for me is really important.
Yet another way to start a conversation and bring people together, which is always going to be a winner.
Absolutely.
Going back to your teaching, you put, I think it must have been on a post, that when you were teaching sex education, because I need to hear this story, you were very precise in your vocabulary, because vagina is used across the board for all parts, really, of women's anatomy, and it's misused. Whereas we should be using vulva a lot more and knowing exactly what vagina is. How did you get 15 and 16-year-old girls and boys to say the words without giggling and actually take on board what it all meant?
Well, I think it was just being open from the onset. When I started delivering those parts of the curriculum, it was, this is how we're going to talk about, our parts, because the work that I was doing at the time, the young people that I was working with, I mean, we're talking slang on slang. They had completely different words and phrases for everything. And so right from the beginning, it was just known that actually this is actually what it's really called. We're not going to call it a fanny or a whatever it was they were referring to it. We're going to talk about it appropriately. And it was about teaching them that is the way to talk about it. And I think just because I was open about it, and there were some giggles in the first place, of course there would be. I think I might have set a little task as well, like a little competition. I can't quite remember, but it was quite funny actually, because in the end I was known as the condom fairy, because there used to be a clinic at school, and we used to talk about sex education, and I was able to distribute condoms, and they used to call me the condom fairy. And to be honest with you, the boys, I was so impressed with a lot of the boys, because eventually they would start using the right terminology, and it was just just wonderful. It was a really important piece of work. And I'm quite proud of that, actually.
I think that's terrific. I'm all about talking to, my eldest is 16, so she's fine with everything and all the terminology and very open. But teaching my 10-year-old, she's all over it, and everything has to be completely precise, from hormones to body parts and functions. So I think it's important and interesting. But I think it's quite fun, actually, the fact that they all know what's going on.
Absolutely. When I think back about teaching in that environment, it was really interesting that the menopause didn't even feature on the curriculum. And even as somebody teaching about puberty, pregnancy, the menopause just wasn't there. And even I, at that time, all those years ago when I was teaching it, didn't even question why. Now I know, obviously, it's on the curriculum thanks to the Make Menopause Matter campaign, which is fantastic. It's like music to my ears, seriously. But one of the kind of strands of work that I am involved in as well, it's about supporting schools, to talk about menopause, and not just with staff, but with students as well. So I suppose my work as a PSHE teacher has kind of really helped with that journey, if that makes sense.
It's such an important part. If we get them young and get them understanding and have the knowledge, so they don't arrive in their 40s clueless like I was as well, then
absolutely,
life is going to be so much better for them and the rest around us.
Well, it's so important that, the next generation coming up, like you say, don't have that same experience or lack of knowledge that we do. We that we really need that to change. And it's exciting to be a part of that. It really is.
Gayle, parting pearls of wisdom.
I think parting pearls of wisdom for me would be to talk, talk. Even if it's, to a friend, to a colleague at work. I think for me, it's about creating the conversation and keeping it going. I think that is really, really important. And really start investing in yourself. Mm-hmm. I think give yourself time, look at yourself as a whole person, look at your life holistically, whether that's diet, looking at your alcohol consumption, exercise, stress management, medical, whether you're going to go down the natural route or supplements. I think it's just really about taking time to invest in yourself. And the key for me, really, it's about community. It's about sharing experiences that has been so helpful for me, and I know it is for others. So, community is what it's all about.
Gayle, where can people find you?
So I am on Instagram at GSW Menoflock, also on Facebook at GSW Menoflock, and I have a website which is www.menoflock.com. Feel free to get in touch.
I will put all the details in the show notes as well, so people have easy access to you and everything that you offer. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, no, it's been lovely. It really has. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
And you're doing wonderful work getting this out, to everybody, because it's much needed. We need to keep those conversations going, and that's what you're doing. Love it.
And we will presumably all be there in October, which is very exciting.
I have a feeling it's the 18th. I know, it's wonderful when you meet people in real life. Oh my goodness. Fabulous. Brilliant stuff. All right, Hattie, thank you so much.
Thank you. You can find Gayle on Instagram at GSW_Menoflock, also at Rock and Rebellion, her new page, and at Menopause_Cafe. Don't forget to go to her website as well, menoflock.com, to find out everything that she offers, all her resources. And what we failed to talk about, because we ran out of time, was that she also does menopause coaching. Go to her website and you can find out more. And once again, a big thank you to our sponsor, Cozy Earth, the creators of temperature-regulating bed linen, which means it will keep you cool and comfortable all night long. Use our exclusive offer for 35% off site-wide and use code MENOPAUSE at the checkout. Please keep spreading the word about the podcast. Share it with everyone you know, as every little bit makes a difference. The more people who understand they're not alone, the better. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.